I always thought I had the perfect life. My husband, Ryan, loved me, or at least that's what I told myself. My younger sister, Lily, was my best friend, my confidant, until the day I stumbled onto something I shouldn't have. Messages, pictures, a hidden life I never imagined. Ryan, Lily together. My chest burned, my heart shattered, and for a moment I felt like I'd stopped breathing. That's when I realized I wasn't going to be their victim. Not anymore. My name is Emma Hartman, and I always thought my life was solid. I was 35, living in Boston, running my own small marketing firm and balancing a marriage that I believed was full of love. My husband, Ryan, was charming in that effortless, confident way that made people trust him immediately. He had this smile that could disarm anyone, and I admit, I was completely taken by it when we first met 10 years ago. We had built a life together that seemed perfect on the outside. A cozy home, two cars, quiet weekends, and vacations that looked picture perfect on Instagram. And then there was my sister, Lily. She's 7 years younger than me, 28 at the time, and always a little wild, free spirited, a whirlwind in sneakers and messy hair. She had this infectious energy that made everyone around her feel alive, but sometimes it drove me crazy. I had always tried to protect her, to guide her, even if it meant picking up the pieces when her choices went wrong. Despite our differences, I loved her more than anything in the world. I thought I knew everyone in my life, the people I trusted, the people I cared for. I was wrong. It all started on a quiet Tuesday morning. Ryan was working from home because of a minor back issue he claimed he had, and Lily had stopped by to borrow some clothes she had left at my place the week before. I had coffee in hand, scrolling through emails when my phone buzzed with a notification from a messaging app I rarely use. I ignored it at first, then another buzz and another. Something in the pit of my stomach told me to check it. It was a message from a number I didn't recognize, but the sender's name popped up as Lily. My first thought was that maybe she was texting Ryan from my phone by accident, but as soon as I opened it, my heart skipped a beat. Can't wait to see you tonight, don't tell Emma. Love you, I froze, coffee dripping from my hand, my eyes scanning the message over and over like it might magically mean something else if I stared long enough. But I knew instantly. The world tilted, and everything I thought I understood about my life crumbled in a single second. My sister, my husband, together. I couldn't breathe. My hands shook violently as I dropped the phone onto the kitchen counter. Lily was in the next room, chatting with me, completely oblivious, laughing at some story she was telling. And Ryan had no idea I knew. My mind raced with disbelief, denial, and fury all at once. I went to the bedroom, closing the door behind me, leaning against it, and just letting the storm inside me rage. How long had this been going on? Weeks, months. I replayed every small moment over the past year, looking for signs I had missed, the whispered phone calls, the sudden business trips, the distant look in Ryan's eyes when Lily came over. Everything made sense now, and yet nothing did. I felt a strange mix of anger and sorrow. Betrayal from a lover is one thing, but from your own sister, that cut deeper than anything I had ever imagined. Memories of late-night talks with Lily flashed in my mind, when she confessed her fears about dating, when I helped her through heartbreak, when I trusted her with my most intimate secrets. And she had been lying all along. She had been lying to me about everything while secretly destroying the one thing I thought was untouchable. I remember the moment I realized I couldn't confront them yet, not without knowing more. I needed proof, evidence that could never be denied. I couldn't let my emotions run wild and ruin everything. This wasn't just anger, it was a betrayal that demanded careful attention, and I had to be smarter than them. I had to understand the depth of the deceit before taking action. So I started quietly observing. I watched Ryan's habits, the way he held his phone, how his tone shifted when Lily was around. I noticed subtle glances between them, casual touches that seemed innocent on the surface but carried weight when you knew what I knew. And Lily, oh Lily, she had grown careless. I caught her slipping, leaving her social media open, sending messages without thinking. Every slip was a thread I could pull. Nights were the hardest, lying in bed next to Ryan, pretending I didn't know, pretending that life was normal, while my mind churned with images of them together. It was maddening. I wanted to scream, to run, to throw everything into chaos. But I didn't. I told myself patience, observation, strategy. And yet, even in the quiet moments when the house was still, I allowed myself to imagine the confrontation, the look of shock on Ryan's face, the guilt on Lily's, the power I would feel in taking back control of my life. The fantasy of revenge became a silent companion, a way to keep my sanity intact as I navigated the storm of emotions. Every day became a careful balancing act. Smile at Ryan, joke with Lily, act like nothing was wrong, all while secretly mapping out the web of deceit. I started keeping notes, small details times patterns. Every conversation, every message, every small hint mattered. And slowly I felt the first spark of clarity amidst the chaos. I wasn't broken, I wasn't weak, I was angry, yes, but I was also in control, and they had no idea what I was capable of. That's how it started, the awakening. the realization that betrayal wasn't just a wound, it was a battlefield, and I was ready to fight. After days of staring at my ceiling, replaying the betrayal in my mind, I realized one truth: I couldn't react impulsively. Anger alone wouldn't fix anything. Ryan and Lily had underestimated me. They assumed I was naive, blind, and too soft to take control. They thought I'd crumble, that I'd confront them in tears or storm out and let them move on. But I had something they didn't: patience. And now I was going to use it like a weapon. The first step was observation. I became hyper aware of every move they made, every word they spoke, every glance that hinted at guilt. I learned Ryan's patterns: when he thought I wasn't paying attention, when he checked his phone obsessively, when his tone softened around Lily. And Lily, oh, she was careless in ways that were beautiful for my plan. She left her messages unsent in drafts, her social media open, and sometimes spoken half truths, assuming I wasn't listening. I started documenting everything. A notebook became my secret weapon. Every date, every time, every small lie, everything was recorded in detail. At first, it felt obsessive, but then it felt necessary. These weren't just notes, they were ammunition, and ammunition was power. I also had to remind myself that this wasn't just about exposing them. This was about regaining control of my life, my dignity. I couldn't allow their betrayal to define me. They had made a mistake in thinking I would react weakly. I wasn't weak, I was meticulous, deliberate, and I knew how to make them regret their choices without stooping to immediate vengeance. The subtlety was key. I started small. I would casually comment on things that only someone paying close attention could notice. Funny how you're always texting Lily late at night. I never accused outright yet. I wanted them to feel the creeping suspicion, to taste the anxiety of uncertainty. Watching them squirm subtly, knowing that the walls of their secret were starting to close in, it gave me a strange sense of satisfaction. I also had to plan emotionally. Revenge wasn't just about exposing their deceit, it was about dismantling the confidence they had in their affair. Ryan thought he could charm his way out of anything. Lily thought her youth and impulsiveness would protect her. Both were wrong. I spent nights imagining every scenario, every confrontation, every subtle humiliation that would make them understand the depth of their mistake. At the same time, I had to manage myself. Maintaining my normal life was critical. Work, social events, family gatherings, I couldn't let anyone suspect the storm brewing inside me. I smiled at friends, laughed at lunch dates, and even hugged Lily, all while secretly plotting the unraveling of their double life. Technology became my ally. I learned to track patterns without being detected. I saw how their messages hinted at times they thought were private, and I started compiling screenshots, locations, and timestamps. Everything would serve as undeniable evidence when the time came. There was a cold precision to it that I found almost addictive. Each discovery, each confirmation of their lies added fuel to the fire of my resolve. But I also realized something crucial: revenge wasn't just about anger. It was about strategy, timing, and impact. A rushed confrontation would only give them a chance to spin the story, to manipulate, to escape the consequences. I needed to strike when the weight of betrayal would hit them hardest, when every lie, every small act of deceit became undeniable and irreversible. I started visualizing the perfect storm. A confrontation that would be so precise, so calculated, that neither Ryan nor Lily would know what hit them until it was too late. I imagined the emotional turmoil on their faces, the guilt that would finally settle in, the fear of exposure. And as I planned, I realized something important. This wasn't about cruelty. It wasn't about making them suffer for the sake of suffering. It was about reclaiming my life, my dignity, and my sense of control. Every day I felt stronger. Every secret I uncovered, every lie I documented, every subtle glance or whispered conversation I observed, it all contributed to the construction of a plan that was mine alone. They had underestimated me, and that mistake would cost them everything. I also prepared myself emotionally. Revenge could consume a person if they weren't careful. I didn't want to lose myself in it. I wanted to remain in control, to act with precision, to let the fallout be theirs, not mine. And in that quiet, meticulous preparation, I found a strange calm, a sense of purpose that made the betrayal feel less like a wound and more like the spark of transformation. At night, lying in bed, I would hear the soft snores of Ryan beside me, the occasional creak of Lily's footsteps when she visited, and I would smile faintly to myself, knowing that everything was in motion. The pieces were falling into place, and soon, very soon, they would learn exactly what happens when you betray someone who knows exactly what you're capable of. This was only the beginning. The planning phase was over in my mind. Now came the time for execution. And when that time came, nothing would be the same again, not for them, not for me. The day I decided to expose them, the air felt different, heavy, charged, like the calm before a storm. I woke up earlier than usual, long before Ryan's alarm. I stood there for a moment, watching him sleep peacefully beside me, completely unaware that the life he had been juggling was about to crumble. I didn't feel pity. Not anymore. I felt clarity, cold, sharp clarity. For weeks, I had documented everything: screenshots, timestamps, phone records, photos, a complete map of every lie Ryan and Lily had carefully woven. I had built a wall of truth strong enough to crush every excuse, every charming smile, every manipulative word they might try to use. And today I was going to let it all unfold. I didn't want a screaming match or a chaotic confrontation where emotions drowned out logic. No, I wanted silence, deadly, suffocating silence where their guilt could echo without interruption. I wanted them to feel the weight of being caught. I invited Lily over for dinner that evening. My voice was steady on the phone, calm enough to fool anyone. Just a small family night. I haven't seen you properly in days, I told her. She giggled, the same carefree laugh she always had. Of course I'll be there. I almost smiled at the irony. Ryan came home around 6, loosening his tie, heading straight to the kitchen. You cooked? He asked, sounding pleasantly surprised. Yes, I said simply. He kissed my cheek, instinctive, practiced affection, and I felt nothing, not love, not anger. Just an observation of a performance he didn't know was ending. By 7, Lily arrived. She came in with her usual bubbly energy, thrusting a box of cupcakes toward me. Thought these would go great with dinner, she said. I took them from her with a smile that wasn't real but wasn't fake either. It was neutral, unreadable. Perfect timing, I replied. Come inside. The table was set beautifully. Candles, polished cutlery, warm lighting. It looked like a celebration. In a way, it was just not for them. We sat down, the three of us, like the perfect little family we pretended to be. Small talk floated across the table: the weather, work, weekend plans. I played along, nodding, smiling, listening, all while feeling the storm tightening its grip around us. Halfway through dinner, I decided it was time. I stood up slowly, pushing my chair back. Ryan looked up at me. Everything okay? Yes, I said. Actually, I wanted to talk to both of you. My voice was calm, too calm, and that's when I saw it. A flicker in Ryan's eyes, a shift in Lily's smile, a silent alarm ringing inside them. Good, I thought, let the fear begin. I reached for my phone, unlocked it, and placed it on the table. Then I slid a folder of printed screenshots beside it. Emma, Ryan's voice cracked just slightly. You know, I began, I used to think secrets were heavy, but lies are heavier. Lily's smile vanished as if someone had snatched it off her face. What are you talking about? She whispered. I met her eyes, those same eyes that used to look at me with trust, admiration, sisterly love. Now they looked terrified, guilty, caught. This, I said, tapping the folder, is what I'm talking about. Ryan reached for it instantly, I think out of panic more than curiosity. His eyes darted across the first page, then the second. His face drained of color as he processed every message, every photo, every timestamp. Lily covered her mouth with both hands, shaking as she leaned back in her chair. Emma, I can explain, she whispered. No, I said sharply, but without raising my voice. You can't, you had months to explain, you didn't. Ryan stood up too quickly, knocking the chair back. It wasn't what you think, don't insult me, I cut him off. You knew exactly what you were doing. For the first time in years, I saw Ryan powerless, not charming, not confident, just exposed. You went behind my back, I continued, both of you. You lied to me while sitting at this very table, eating my food, pretending to care. You shared secrets, touched each other, planned moments together while I was right here, your wife, your sister. Lily began crying, soft, broken crying that once would have torn me apart, but now it felt distant, like listening to rain from behind a closed window. Emma, please, I never meant to. You did, I said. You meant every second of it. Ryan reached for me as if touching me would erase the truth. Emma, we can fix this. I stepped back. You already made your choice, I said. Both of you did. I'm just giving you the consequences. Silence fell thick, suffocating, brutal. I walked to the living room, picked up a small envelope, and placed it on the dining table. What's this? Ryan asked, hesitating. Proof of everything, I said, and my decision. Inside were divorce papers. Real, signed, ready. Ryan stared at them, stunned. Lily sobbed harder, her hands trembling. You're leaving me, Ryan whispered. No, I said calmly. You left me a long time ago. I'm just finally acknowledging it. He collapsed into his chair, burying his face in his hands. Lily stood up, reaching toward me. Emma, please. I stepped away from her too. I loved you, I said quietly. Both of you, but you chose each other over me, and now you get to live with that choice. For the first time, neither of them tried to argue, neither tried to deny. Neither tried to escape, they just sat there, crushed under the weight of their own actions. I walked to the front door, opened it, and looked back at them one last time. This house was my home, I said, but not anymore. And then I walked out, leaving them to face each other, their guilt, and the ruins they had created. The truth was out, the storm had hit, and in the aftermath, only one thing was clear: I was done being their victim. Walking away from that house felt like stepping out of a cage I hadn't even realized I'd been trapped in. The air outside was cold, biting, but it didn't bother me. I welcomed it. For the first time in months, I wasn't hiding my pain, my fury, or my strength. I was free from the lies, from the betrayal, from pretending everything was okay. but freedom, I quickly realized, came with a weight of its own. Revenge had its consequences, more than just the satisfaction of seeing them exposed. Leaving Ryan and Lily behind wasn't just a physical act, it was an emotional severing of the life I thought I had. And as I navigated that first week of my new reality, I felt the first waves of a loneliness I hadn't anticipated. People around me, friends, colleagues, noticed something had shifted. I didn't explain, I didn't have to. The truth of betrayal and my response to it was mine alone. Some nights, the silence of my apartment was deafening. The absence of Ryan's familiar voice, Lily's laughter, even the shared bickering that once annoyed me, it all felt like a vacuum. But in that vacuum, I also discovered a clarity I hadn't had before. I started reflecting on what revenge had truly cost me. Not money, not time, not even my energy, but the people I had loved, the trust I had placed in them, the illusion of family I had built around us. I realized that no matter how precise, how calculated, how satisfying my plan had been, the emotional fallout was mine to carry. Ryan and Lily were broken in their own ways, yes, but I was navigating a new terrain, a life unshackled yet shadowed by the trauma of betrayal. I began to notice changes in myself, small at first. I no longer flinched at messages, didn't obsess over missed calls. My decisions became sharper, my patience longer, my sense of self stronger. Yet sometimes, when I caught a familiar scent or a fleeting memory, a pang of what I had lost would strike me, momentarily unbalancing the armor I had built. The legal process that followed wasn't easy. Divorce papers, financial settlements, property negotiations, all logistical battles that forced me to confront Ryan in structured, inevitable ways. Each interaction reminded me of the life that could have been and the choices that had taken it away. Lily, too, tried to reach out, sent long, remorseful messages, some even begging for forgiveness. I read them once, then deleted them. Not cruelty, but clarity. Forgiveness isn't always about them. Sometimes it's about protecting yourself from being drawn back into the fire. I also had to deal with subtle external consequences. Friends took sides, whispers circulated in social circles, and the quiet judgment of strangers sometimes cut deeper than words from those I loved. But I refused to falter. Every whisper reminded me of my power, of the fact that I had reclaimed my life, my dignity, and my agency. Emotionally, there were moments of guilt. I wondered fleetingly if my revenge had been too harsh, if my deliberate exposure had scarred them irreparably. But I quickly reminded myself they had made their choices, they had lived their lives, and I too had lived in a lie for far too long. My actions weren't about cruelty. They were about balance, justice, and reclaiming what was mine, my peace, my autonomy, my integrity. The nights remained the hardest. Alone in my apartment, I often replayed every interaction, every word, every expression of betrayal. I allowed myself the full range of emotions: anger, sorrow, relief, and even a strange satisfaction. I realized revenge isn't a singular act, it's a process. A process that reshapes the person carrying it as much as the people it targets. And in carrying it, I discovered a new version of myself, cautious but strong, aware but unbroken, empowered but human. One evening, weeks later, I sat by my window, a cup of tea in hand, and watched the city lights shimmer across the streets of Boston. I thought of Ryan, of Lily, of the lives that once intertwined with mine. I felt no desire to contact them, no lingering attachment, no hope of reconciliation. And for the first time, I felt completely at peace. I had faced betrayal, had planned and executed justice on my terms, and had survived the emotional tempest that came with it. Revenge had consequences, not all of them predictable, not all of them easy, but every one of them had carved a clearer path forward for me. I had been tested and I had endured. My trust in others may never be the same, my family ties may remain fractured, but my self-respect had never been stronger. I was no longer defined by their betrayal. I was defined by my response to it, and in that moment I understood the final truth: revenge is never just about the other people. It is, at its core, about reclaiming yourself from the shadow they cast over your life, and I had done exactly that. Months had passed since that night, the night I walked out of the house that had once been my life. Time, I discovered, doesn't erase pain, but it sharpens perspective. I had learned to navigate life without Ryan, without Lily, without the false comfort of what I thought was a family. And in doing so, I had found something far more valuable: myself. At first, the emptiness was deafening. The silence of my apartment, once comforting in its solitude, sometimes pressed against me like a weight. I missed what I thought I had lost, not the betrayal itself, but the comfort of familiarity, the illusion of security. But slowly, I rebuilt. I focused on my work, on my friends, and on passions I had neglected while wrapped up in the web of lies. Each choice, each small act reminded me that my life was no longer dictated by anyone else. I was in charge. I discovered strength I didn't know I had. Walking into rooms alone, speaking my mind freely, setting boundaries, these became my new normal. I no longer flinched at betrayal or manipulation. I carried myself with a quiet confidence that came from having faced a storm and survived it fully without compromise. People often asked if I hated them, Ryan, Lily, but hatred wasn't my goal. Their betrayal had hurt me, yes, but my focus was never revenge for the sake of malice, it was reclamation. I had taken back my life, my dignity, and my peace. In a strange way, their mistakes had been gifts. They forced me to confront the reality of my own power and independence. Even as life moved forward, I remained vigilant, not out of paranoia, but out of self respect. I chose relationships carefully now, trusting slowly and discerning motives with precision. I had learned that love, trust, and loyalty are precious, and once broken, they cannot be assumed, they must be earned. The final closure came quietly. I didn't need dramatic confrontations or public declarations. Closure wasn't about forcing them to feel shame, it was about feeling whole myself. I no longer thought of Ryan and Lily in the same emotional storm I once had. I thought of them as part of my past, lessons engraved into the blueprint of who I had become. One evening, I walked along the Charles River, the skyline of Boston glittering against the night. The cool wind brushed my face, sharp and refreshing, and I felt alive in a way I hadn't before. I thought of the life I had reclaimed, the career, the friendships, the freedom to live without manipulation. I smiled not out of triumph over them, but triumph over myself. I had been betrayed, I had been hurt, I had been forced to rebuild from the shards of my life, and yet here I was, stronger, wiser, and unshakably in control. Empowerment isn't about revenge alone, it's about understanding your own worth, taking back the parts of your life that were stolen, and refusing to let anyone else dictate your happiness. I had done that. I had become the architect of my own future, unburdened by lies and unshaken by betrayal. And in that realization, I finally smiled for myself fully, freely, knowing that no one, not Ryan, not Lily, not any secret, no matter how dark, could ever take that away from me again. I was whole, I was free, I was me.